Yo, yo, it's time to discover the flow. Shout out to the bros. You know, I like to welcome everybody to discover the flow. No matter how you discover the show or discover the bros, now you about to see how far we can go, because it's time for discover the flow. Yeah, cowabunga do. You know live is how we come to you. Turn the levels up when you hear the boys coming through. The Pod Squad giving you just what you need, hitting you with a new special guest every week. Don't you dare hit skip, man, it's Tristan and Kip. DTF Pod about to take you on a trip. Mega Ran bring the heat, yeah. But be clear, I wasn't even supposed to be here. Welcome to Discover the Flow. No matter how you discovered the show or discovered the bros, now you about to see how far we can go, because it's time for Discover the Flow. Let's start the show.
A few seconds after I did that.
It's a shame I missed that. I'm sure there'll be other opportunities.
Oh, I'm sure
there will be. I'm sure you'll
see it. Yeah, no, we are. Yeah, nothing if not entertaining. Let's put it that way.
And we're all Kevin Smith fans, so inappropriateness kind of lives in our heart and souls.
Yep, goes with the territory.
Yep.
So, how are you, sir?
Good, not too bad.
Where about in the States do you reside at nowadays?
I'm in Orlando.
Okay. So, I think I remember that from your original post where we had discovered you.
Yep.
Yeah,
Kevin was in town with Dogma a couple weeks ago, and then I was supposed to get together with him to talk about the stash, and then his mom had some kind of medical issue, so we had to bail on that. But he's in town pretty frequently because she lives about a half hour away.
Yeah, nice. She's unfortunately been having those on and off, I've noticed, over the last year or so.
Oh, yeah. She's getting up there, you know.
Yeah, my mom's the same age.
We were promised an interview by him about almost a year ago now, so things keep coming up, but we're persistent.
Yeah,
we'll get there. We'll get there. The man's a busy man.
We keep talking with him and Jay. Jay was even to the point of he's like, keep bugging me. It's going to happen. He's like, just keep coming back. We're going to find time.
And both of them are very, dare I say, notorious for helping people out that are trying to get started with podcasts and things like that.
Oh,
so
good.
It's nice to have that knowledge that when they say they're going to do it, it may take a year and a half, but they're going to do it.
I actually made the joke with Jay. I was like, since at Chronicon, it'll be a year since you said yes, we should just do it there. And he goes, booked. That's where we're doing it. I was like, damn it.
Yeah, but that's what he said last year.
Oh, Lord.
So how long have you been doing this?
Working on a year?
Yeah, we're almost at a year with this one. I used to do a pro wrestling podcast called It's a Work that I did for quite a while, but I wanted to branch out and do something that wasn't so limited.
And I used to be on a group podcast with a couple of buddies of mine. It was mostly wrestling related, but we did kind of I used to do a segment called WTF News.
Uh-huh.
So where I would find the most ridiculous news story that I could and just read it to the guys and get their reactions. So we've done some interesting things over the years.
Yeah. It's the independent wrestling world has led us all in different directions that we never thought we would end up in.
Yeah.
So where are you guys located?
We're outside of Chicago.
Okay.
We're in the town called Naperville. It's about a half an hour outside of Chicago.
We just had Gordon Ramsay here this week.
Oh, really?
We didn't. Naperville did.
Wow. Yeah, Naperville did. No, not us.
He's got a restaurant downtown Naperville.
Okay.
And he was visiting.
They just opened that up about a year ago within walking distance of us. So, but
oh wow.
So you are. Let me get this right. You were a former Imagineer, but your job was were you writing the shows and stuff like that? What exactly were you doing? Writing, producing?
At Imagineering, I was a writer, producer, and creative director, mostly a writer. So it's all treatments and scripts and anything written. that you can imagine. And then at Universal, I was a creative director. And in theme parks, that's a creative director is to a project what a movie director is to a movie. So just kind of spearheading the whole thing from a creative point of view. And my last project at Universal, or one of the last ones, just opened officially last week, Epic Universe. So that was pretty exciting to finally see it.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of behind the scenes pictures and videos of the stuff for How to Train Your Dragon and their versions of Toothless walking around and everything, and it looks amazing. I've never seen anything like that before.
Incredible. I'm actually kind of amazed Universal got there first before Disney, but those, because they're robots and they're stunning.
Oh, they're animatronics. They're not people in there.
No, well, the Toothless is a machine. It's a robot.
Oh, wow.
There is a bigger dragon that's got a person inside of it, but Toothless, and I think there's another one that are just sort of autonomous robot or puppeteered, but they're still, they're not. There's nobody inside them.
The detail that they've got on those animatronics is fantastic, though. That's incredible to me.
It's pretty amazing what the state of the art at this point.
When my first introduction to animatronics was Chuck E. Cheese. Well, actually, it was Showbiz Pizza at the time, but it's this stuff, and now it's so articulate and intricate and amazing.
Yeah, that's the funny thing about being Generation X is like we've seen it all at this point.
The Chuck E. Cheese stuff I remember being absolutely terrifying as a kid. Especially if something malfunctioned and fell apart. Nothing synced up, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But nowadays we have stuff like, and I fall down rabbit holes watching these videos where they have Megatron standing around talking trash with people at Hollywood Studios Universal Studios.
Universal,
yeah, like that.
Those are cool. Those are guys on stilts.
Yeah, I've figured that much out, but I'm like, it's just the creativity that goes into everything to making it all work. The smoke and lights and magic and everything. It wows me.
Yeah, and those things are impressive when they walk out on stage.
Yeah, there's the adult in me that wants to know how everything's done, and then there's the little kid in me that just wants to keep believing that Santa Claus is, out there doing his thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So you go ahead.
I was going to say, you said you did a lot of writing and whatnot for Disney, in the Imagineers, under the Imagineer heading.
Yes.
What were some of the things that you actually worked on specifically? Like,
I worked on Star Tours: The Adventures Continue, which opened in 2011. So that was kind of the refresh of the original attraction that brought in a lot of the movie locations and characters and stuff like that. Worked on the new Fantasyland at Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World, the Monsters Incorporated laugh floor, a bunch of little things here and there throughout the years. I worked on the enhancements that we did to Pirates of the Caribbean and the Haunted Mansion, so that was super fun because I got to sort of touch some of the classics. It just gives you an opportunity to contribute to two of the most beloved attractions of all time. And then I've done a ton of work in hotels, restaurants, retail shops, the cruise ships, Disney Vacation Club. It's like, you name it, I wrote it. And was there for about 15 years, started writing books on the side. I wrote a book about the Haunted Mansion, a book about pirates, a book called The Disney Mountains, which is about all of the e-ticket thrill rides, that are the Disney Mountain Range. And then through Disney, I got in league with Marvel and wound up writing the art of the Avengers. So it's kind of the making of book for the first Avengers film in 2012.
Okay.
So long time. I've been doing this 30 years as a writer, producer, creative director, and creative executive. And I'm currently freelancing. I think I'm on the road back to Disney, actually, but at the moment still freelancing and got a couple book projects in the works. So still a lot going on.
Well, in one statement, you just hit all my fandoms. So you're my new best friend.
Thank you.
Tristan, before we get deeper into the stuff that you have done and that you're doing, how does like what even led you down this path? Like, how did you even get to this point where you're like, okay, this is what I want to do with my life?
Well, when I was a little kid, or going all the way back to elementary school, I had what I would call parallel dreams, but they were all entertainment related. So on the one side, I was into film and television. Then on the other side, I was into Disney specifically and the theme park end of it specifically. But I never thought I could be an Imagineer because I wasn't an artist, engineer, or architect. And it wasn't until much later that I realized that as a writer, I have every bit as much to contribute through that discipline, through what I do, as any of those other disciplines. So that dream wound up coming true first. I've done a little work for television. I made an independent film called Characters, which I told Kevin was because they actually consulted on it a little bit back in the late 90s. I got notes from them, and there was a moment where I thought I was going to get Jay and Bob for a cameo. That wound up not working out, but it was basically clerks in a theme park. And then for the past 10 years, I was an executive creative director at Universal Creative, which is Universal's Imagineering. And my big projects there were Universal Studios Beijing, Epic Universe, and then my last big project for them was the park that they're contemplating building outside of London. So three big park projects in 10 years. So a lot of fun. But yeah, this is my 31st year in entertainment, and seen and done a lot over that time.
I saw that you had done some stuff with the Haunted Mansion, like you had said, and that intrigued me greatly because my family is very big. We're big on a few things. One of them is musical theater, and the other one's basically Disney. Like I have a Lilo and Stitch tattoo and a Mickey head tattoo on me myself. But Haunted Mansion is real big with me and my cousin. So when I was reading about you doing the tombstone that was dedicated to Leota Tombs, I thought that was really cool. Could you tell us more about that project?
Yeah, it's interesting because this was back when, and I'm not sure if this is still the case, but there was a certain amount of money set aside each year for what we called the enhancement program. And what that was designed to do was enhance elements in the theme parks that didn't necessarily qualify to be a big project, and there was no return on investment expected. It was just for fun, to beautify the parks, to improve the parks. So we knew we wanted to do an interactive tombstone at the Haunted Mansion. Interactive meaning it would animate and come to life in some way. And when I got assigned to it, what I was most thrilled about was just knowing that it was going to go in the family plot, the graveyard, off to the left as you're about to go into the mansion. So the big question early on was, well, it's going in with all of these other tombstones that are designed to salute the Imagineers who worked on the attraction. And oddly enough, Leota Tombs did not have one. So we decided fairly early on that whatever the interactivity was going to be, and it wound up being the face that moves up and down slightly and blinks. But we knew going early in that we were going to dedicate it to Leota, and Leota was going to finally get her own tombstone. And because Madame Leota is named after Leota Tombs, we basically took the approach that the tombstone was where Madame Leota is buried. So that's why the epitaph is "Dear sweet Leota, beloved by all in regions beyond now, but having a ball." So that's a reference, obviously, to the crystal ball. And she talks about summoning spirits from regions beyond in her incantations. So it was a cool little Easter egg, and also a way to pay tribute to one of the key Imagineers behind the attraction who hadn't had that salute yet.
I love that as you're talking about this in the background, you can see your window and there's thunder and lightning going.
Yeah,
it was so appropriate for the conversation at that moment.
Right. Yeah, we're having one of our central Florida thunderstorms tonight.
Nice.
For the kids, the dog, everyone's freaked out. I'm fine, but the kids are jumping.
So since we're on this Haunted Mansion thing, can you talk about the art of the Haunted Mansion?
Yeah, that was a companion book that I wrote back in 2002. I first pitched Disney on the idea of doing a book about the Haunted Mansion, and it was really kind of a sly way of doing it because I knew that they were going to make a film based on the Haunted Mansion. Same thing with Pirates of the Caribbean, which obviously turned out very well, as we know. But about a year ahead of time, I contacted our Imagineering leader, Marty Sklar, who was the head of Imagineering for a long, long time, many years. He was handpicked by Walt Disney right out of college, to work at Disneyland as a writer for the Disneyland newspaper back in the old days. And he loved the idea because I basically said, okay, we got this movie coming out next year, so there's going to be all of this tie-in merchandise. Let's do a book that's really about the making of the attraction, but we'll include a section about the making of the film to get the company excited about it. Because that's, at the time that seemed more marketable. So the company went for it, and that was how that happened. And then in the course of writing that book, which is still in print, it's called The Haunted Mansion, Imagineering a Disney Classic. But the first edition, the first and second edition, covered the making of the film as well, the Eddie Murphy movie in 2003. So when I got to know everybody at Walt Disney Studios and on the film crew, they said, well, we want to do a second book called The Art of the Haunted Mansion that's going to celebrate all of the artistry that went into the film, the production design, costume design, and the ghosts and the creature effects of Rick Baker. So that was really a standalone project that I did. It was never sold in stores. You can get it on eBay and I think Amazon Marketplace. You can track them down. But it was really commissioned by the studio to send out for Academy Awards consideration and sending it to journalists and things like that. So it was more of a promotional book. But I think it's pretty valuable because there weren't a ton of them printed. But yeah, that was a special project for the studio. But it was a really cool time, being on the set of the film and obviously being a huge Haunted Mansion fan. Getting to walk around on those movie sets was just unbelievable because the 2003 film, the production design, all of those three disciplines I mentioned, production design, costume design, and the special makeup effects were absolutely gorgeous and stunning. So to see that in person was something I have not forgotten.
It's always been kind of weird to me that the Haunted Mansion attempts on film have never been as big as you'd think that they would be. Like you said, Pirates of the Caribbean, they hit heavy with that. Well, I'm not knocking anything, but it seems like the best version of the Haunted Mansion that they've put on television was the one they did with the Muppets.
I still hold out hope that they'll at some point let Guillermo del Toro do his version because that was in development for a long time. And he's a huge Haunted Mansion fan.
Wait, did you say that was in development?
Yeah, it was.
That was actually a thing that almost happened. Oh my gosh!
I wish.
One more thing to be upset about in the movie world. But the funny thing, mentioning how well Pirates did, I pitched a Pirates of the Caribbean book at the same time as the Haunted Mansion book, and there was no interest whatsoever. They're like, nope. Our Jerry Bruckheimer books always go right in the toilet. We did Armageddon, it didn't sell. We did Pearl Harbor, it didn't sell. And I said,
those two, I'm not surprised.
But I said, I have a feeling this one's going to be a little different. It's got Johnny Depp, and it seems pretty interesting what they're doing with it. They're like, nope. So then the next summer, the movie comes out, and about the time it was passing $300 million at the box office, I get a call from my editor saying, we're really disappointed we didn't do the Pirates book. And I went, oh, that's interesting, because I seem to recall having this conversation about a year ago. And that's what led to the Pirates book, which came out, I think, in 2005. And then in 2006, we did a version that incorporated more of the second film as well. So, yeah, but super fun. And being on I talked about Haunted Mansion, being on the set of the Pirates films, which I was on, saw some of the soundstage work in LA, and then actually went down to the Bahamas where they were shooting on location. And to see the Black Pearl and the Flying Dutchman out on the open water was just mind-boggling. It's really, really incredible productions.
it
I heard
kind of amazes me. It kind of amazes me that such a great attraction like the Haunted Mansion had a relative flop of a movie,
Right.
relatively speaking,
Relatively speaking.
and a throwaway attraction like Pirates of the Caribbean spawned this mind-blowing 6-movie and or more
and they want to make more,
universe.
Yeah.
or at least that's always the rumor.
It's just one was a throwaway and one was really popular. And I mean, I guess Pirates of the Caribbean was always popular, but the movies had almost nothing to do with the attraction.
Yeah,
There was very
big
few
thing-
parallels.
Yeah, there were some Easter eggs and nods to the attraction. The single biggest influence that the attraction had on the films, for my money, is what made the films the success they were, and that was the supernatural element.
Right.
Because when Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio, the screenwriters, came on board, they were the ones that said, "Look, the supernatural element is the one thing that's going to separate this from all other pirate movies. Because if you don't really have that added hook, you basically got an old Errol Flynn movie,
Right.
and pirate films were pretty much dead at the box office at that point. The last big one was Cutthroat Island with Gina Davis and I think Matthew Modine. Didn't exactly set the world on fire. So in the case of Disney's pirates, it was that supernatural element and the old switcheroo in that these pirates are actually trying to give the treasure back, to break the curse. So that was really, I think, what made it the hit that it was. And then every subsequent film in the series had a major supernatural element to it. And that's something that they actually repeated with the Jungle Cruise with Dwayne Johnson and Emily Blunt a couple years ago. You could definitely see the pirates' influence on Jungle Cruise as well, because again, that was something that differentiated it from any other kind of run-of-the-mill adventure movie.
Well, that, and if you think about it, like the one thing that Haunted Mansion has going against it is it's all set in one location.
Mhm.
It has one primary place where it takes place, and pirates and Jungle Cruise and stuff like that, they're traveling from exotic location to exotic location, and they have no limits on where they can go, really.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
It's
Yeah,
like being landlocked.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a solid film in there, and it's interesting because there are things that I really enjoy about the 2003 version. There are things I really enjoy about the 2023 version, almost exactly 20 years later. All of them, in both of them, the house looks sensational, and the production design is just off the charts. I just don't think that they've quite nailed the tone yet, which interestingly enough was an issue with the attraction, because Walt passed away while the Haunted Mansion was in development, and about ready to go into production. And there was a faction of Imagineers that wanted it to be more funny. And that they were led by Mark Davis, who's a long-standing Disney animator, one of the 9 Old Men, one of Walt's 9 Old Men, and also a key Imagineer. And he thought, well, it's the Haunted Mansion, so people are already going to be a little on edge anyway. So we want to keep it light so it doesn't get too scary. Then another Imagineer, Claude Coates, who's another longtime Disney legend, he had the exact opposite opinion, where he said, well, it's the Haunted Mansion, so there's going to be an expectation that it's scary. So they were toggling back and forth between the two extremes, and normally Walt would be the one to kind of settle that debate once and for all. And I got a nice peal of thunder there too. So Walt's chiming in, I think, from beyond. So with Walt passing away during development, they kind of ended up with this hybrid between the two, where it's a little bit scary, a little bit funny, and the tone just works. And I think it was a combination of several geniuses, working together on this attraction, and the fact that Walt wasn't there to say it's this or it's this. And who knows, he might have said, do it all, just like they ended up doing. But I think you get the result is, as they call it, a frightfully funny adventure. Personally, I think on the film side, they need to lean a little bit more into the scary side, which the 2023 film, I think, did a little bit more. That one was a little scarier than the original. They are both comedies. But I think the films are attempting to walk that same tightrope that the original attraction has done so well.
And you have to take what you learn in books and on television and documentaries with a grain of salt, because you never know what's being added or twisted or this or that. But I've always loved the fact that it seemed like Walt and Roy had this amazing relationship where they knew their places in all of it, and if one wouldn't have worked without the other. Because if you didn't have Walt's imagination and determination to make things happen, it wouldn't have worked. But also, if Roy wasn't there, for lack of a better term, quarterbacking him and making sure he had the money to do these things, I don't know if Walt would have known how to get that done at the same time as expressing himself in the ways that he did.
Yeah, totally.
And I don't think Roy gets enough credit for that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
One had to have their feet on the ground.
Yeah, and Roy was kind of the governor, if you will, on the engine, that was Walt Disney. And they were, even when they had disagreements, they were fiercely loyal to each other, and they knew that they couldn't do what they did without the other. And to Roy's credit, he was always dedicated to realizing as many of Walt's dreams as possible. And 9 times out of 10, he found the money. Somehow he figured out how to do it. And he had no problem, being in the background.
We have an obsession with the series, how blank was made, or it was like the food that built America, and they have one specifically like how Disney built America, and the way that they portray the relationship between the two is always like, all right, Walt, go do it, but this is all the money we have to do it with, so I don't know where I'm going to get more if you want more. And then he comes back and asks for more, and it's like, damn it, all right, I'll go find more, Walt, so you can play.
And he usually did it.
Right?
And what's interesting is history repeated itself a little bit in the 80s and 90s with Michael Eisner and Frank Wells, where they were effectively partners, even though Michael was the top chief executive.
And that's the only name I ever knew. I knew Michael Eisner. I have no idea who Frank Wells is. You know what I mean?
He was the Roy, and he had no problem doing that. In fact, it was initially presented that they be co-CEOs, and Michael didn't want to do that. He didn't think that was an effective way to lead the company. And to his credit, Frank said, then, hey, I'll be president and chief operating officer, and sort of yield that top spot to Michael. But they acted very much as a partnership, as a team. And I remember, when Michael would walk through the park, and he, like Walt, he was firing on all cylinders, and he would have all these ideas. And Frank would always kind of run along behind and then talk to the people that Michael just talked to and say, what did he say? What does he want to do? What's going on? And then, trying to, keep the train on the tracks. In terms of finances, and then also, Michael had a really big imagination as well. But it's interesting to me that partnership has continued at Disney, and not so much now, with Bob in charge, but the Eisner Wells years were very reminiscent of the Walt and Roy.
And I remember
that'll come back around eventually.
Yeah.
There will eventually be another power couple, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
Of Disney, and when it does, it'll be a renaissance, I feel like.
Absolutely.
I remember Eisner very well from when I was a kid, because it was those Sunday nights when he would pop on the screen to present a show or a movie or something like that, and it always felt special because you had your family and your snacks, and it was the place to be on Sunday night to watch
the wonderful world of Disney.
Yeah, before you go back to school on the next morning and be like, did you guys see that? That was awesome. It was magic.
Yeah, and that was something very important to Michael, because he wasn't necessarily terribly comfortable, being on camera, but he felt that it was important to do that, like Walt, to put the human face with the Disney company. Because when you think about it, Disney is one of the few companies where even the average person could probably tell you, who's in charge. And the number of companies that have that are so few and far between. Apple, maybe Netflix, Amazon, but Disney has always had that human face, and that's something that Bob Iger has done as well. He's been a very polished face of the Walt Disney Company, and they've all been very different. Walt is very different from Michael, and Michael's very different from Bob, but all of them have embraced that sort of elder statesman of the entertainment industry role. So it's a big deal.
They're all dreamers too.
Yeah,
they all have that in common for everything that's different about them.
You have to be in charge of Disney. You're the head of the juggernaut of creativity.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to be an idea man, so to speak.
Because even today, the notion of a Disney film indicates something very specific, to the audience, whereas you don't have anyone, to my knowledge, saying, "Hey, Friday night we're going to go see the new Paramount movie," or the new Warner Brothers film.
No, you get that with like Pixar and Marvel, and that's about it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny too, because like if you look at the two big films from the weekend, it was a Disney movie and a Paramount movie, but no one refers to Mission Impossible as a Paramount movie. It's a Tom Cruise movie. Right. So it really is stunning. And I hate using this word because it's so corporate, but the brand that was built up over the years. I prefer to say the name, the meaning, behind the name Disney, and that's something that still holds true.
So are we supposed to call them Paramount movies or Scientology movies?
I think Tom would have a different opinion on that.
I just figured that was always how he got away with doing the amazing stunts.
Yeah, it's funny because say what you will about Tom Cruise, the man is dedicated to his art, and
I've got no problem with him, man. The guy's he's never not been entertaining.
Yeah,
I'm still blown away by the second Top Gun movie they made, because that had a huge chance to flop, and it was.
You mean Star Wars all over again?
It was a new.
It was the trench run of a New Hope.
It was the trench run.
That movie was.
But you know what? Hey, God bless them for disguising it as something new and polishing it up and presenting it their own way. I thought
Maverick was great, and it's funny because like they knew what they had, because that was during COVID, and that movie was done for years. And I think Cruise,
like a good 2 years, and they sat on it.
And
people were going broke, going, please release it.
Yeah, and he's like, no, this is a theatrical film, and a lot of people really view Maverick as being one of the films that started to bring movie going back. That's why it was so great to see this record-breaking Memorial Day weekend, because the theatrical has still struggled ever since COVID, but this is a record-breaking weekend for post-COVID or any other time. So I still believe in theatrical. I still like going to the movies. I don't always like sitting with other people, but I love going to the movie.
That was one great thing about COVID. I realized, I was like, oh, I don't like people that as much as I thought I did.
But we are both like huge cinephiles. We love going to the movie theater. The experience of sitting in front of a massive screen and watching somebody else's creativity take shape.
Getting our snacks, getting all comfy.
Oh yeah. Or the theater that we go to now, usually they serve us dinner. Like you get a full meal. Like but it's still the whole experience of going out, sitting down. Just every step of it is part of the experience.
Yeah, there's a romance to it.
It terrifies me that that's going to go away one day.
It's funny because I don't think it'll ever entirely go away. Obviously, they're doing everything they can to differentiate, but like we've seen this happen before. Television almost killed the movies, and then that's what led to CinemaScope and 3D and all of this stuff. Where they're trying to get people out of their houses and back into the movie theater. So this type of thing has happened before. It'll happen again, and I think the pandemic just sped up something that was already happening in terms of streaming and windows getting a lot tighter between, you know, when a film is in theaters and when you can get it digitally. And I think, you know, maybe, and we've seen this a couple times already as sort of an experiment, but there might come a day where a film opens in a theater and you can get it at home on the same day, and then you decide how you want to see it. But it's funny because during the pandemic, I fell down, you know, we're talking about a YouTube rabbit hole. And I found, and I still call it up and watch it every once in a while now, but the audience reaction to the end of Avengers Endgame. And I remember watching it during COVID for the first time during the quarantine period. And I actually started crying because I missed that experience so much. And I remember when I felt that the movies were back was when I went to go see Black Widow. And I think that was 2021.
Which was such a good movie that didn't get the flowers it deserved.
Exactly. But for me, seeing that Marvel logo with the fanfare, I'm like, okay, the movies are back. And then December of 2022, what really cemented it was Spider-Man No Way Home, which
absolutely
had audience reactions that rivaled Endgame, you know, especially when Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield came out.
I mean, I'll never forget in the late 90s when Phantom Menace came out.
Yeah.
The visceral reaction of that crowd, you can't do that at home. You can't get that on your couch. You can feel it. You can feel great, but you cannot have that live group experience, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, it's a communal experience.
Yeah, and it's like going to a concert or going to a theater show or anything like that. When you're with other people, it builds your reaction, it builds your feelings, it builds your emotions more than sitting there watching it on your own could ever do.
Yeah, absolutely. And the same thing with comedies. You know, there's really no substitute. All right. Sorry, I have a visitor. Zoe, you got it.
Hi.
Okay.
Hi.
Hello.
But Daddy, Jake got me this toilet paper and I didn't know where it is, and it's stinky.
So
That's all right. We
No
just had
problem.
stinky bathrooms here too, so it's okay.
in the laundry room. Go get it. It's by the washing machine. Wait, go on, honey. I'm in the middle
I'm
of
not
something.
gonna get it. I'm good.
All right, that's a little Easter egg for you. No,
That's all right. I'm really good at editing, so don't worry.
She's adorable.
No, I think there's really no substitute for that communal experience. I mean, the things that bother me are the texting and the phones, and it's like, really, you know, if you're going to do that, you could have stayed at home. But then you see something like No Way Home, and you're just like, this is why we come to the movies, to have this shared experience.
I like that it also seems like over the last couple of years, people have gotten better with spoilers. Like there's a community that's come out there. It's like, all right, let's not post about this yet. Let's talk privately about it and do that. And then the other thing that I've kind of fallen in love with, and I never knew this was something I would love, is going to see movies in the theaters that I already have seen and know that I love.
That's one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, to be there in the experience, because it's so much different when you're there with a theater full of people who are all there for the same reason. You already seen it, you already love it. So the vibe is just a totally different vibe. People are clapping, people are laughing, people are applauding, people are quoting, just everything. And they all know what's coming. So there's an energy in the air.
Especially when it's a movie that you haven't seen. Like the only way we could see it, because it was something that came out before our time, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We couldn't see it in the theaters. So for when they revive movies and bring them around, it's gives you that experience that you didn't get to have as a child.
Yeah, and without fail, when I see a film on the big screen, without fail, I see things and hear things that were lost at home. You know, because of just the sheer size of the image or the way the audio is presented. I hear things and see things, and I'm like, oh my gosh! Like I remember last year, the year before, I went to see It's a Wonderful Life, which I've seen dozens and dozens of times. And sure enough, I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't see that in the frame, or I heard a sound effect or a little piece of dialogue or something that was brand new to me. And this is a movie I've seen dozens of times. It's really incredible.
Well,
I had that
speaking
experience with
go
The
ahead.
Princess Bride recently. Actually, we went to go see it in a big theater where there was legitimately probably about 500 people
Yeah.
crammed into this theater to all see it. And like I said, just the energy alone that you feel in it, or when something's coming up, there's the type of feel,
Yeah, I took my son to see Christmas Vacation last December, and it was a showing where Chevy Chase was there, so he did a Q&A afterwards. But this is a theater primarily filled with adults. I mean, there were a few kids, and I had my kid, but I have a movie kid, so he's a little unusual. But there was one point where the classic call and response, like, why is the carpet wet, Todd? I don't know, Margot. The whole theater said, I don't know, Margot. And they all said it the same way, in the same cadence, with what was going on in the screen. And I remember being blown away, going, it's one thing if you're a dork, like a nerd like me, and doing it in a Star Wars movie or a Marvel movie, but these are all like regular people.
Well, and we had that as well when the part where Miracle Max appears.
Yeah.
And Andre first knocks on the door. The whole place was quoting that entire little spot in sync together.
Exactly.
I am the Brute Squad. You are the Brute Squad.
It's magic.
Yeah.
It really is. That's
But
why I love
you
movies so much.
You don't have enough of that nowadays, I feel like.
Right.
The thing I like that you mentioned, Jason, was the fact that you went and saw It's a Wonderful Life, and you saw something on the screen in the frame that you didn't see before. And the reason people don't understand, part of the reason for that is when they reformatted the movie for the TV screen, they cut off 2/3 of the movie.
Yeah.
On either side. And when you see it on that large screen, you can see everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And
everybody's spoiled now with Letterbox and stuff like that. So, and 16:9 and all that good stuff.
That started to come out, I think, when I was in my early 20s. And I remember initially not liking it because I'm like, oh, it makes an already small image even smaller. So I don't. And then within a year or two, I'm like, what are you, an idiot? That's the way you're meant to watch this. And then as the TVs got bigger, it hasn't been as much of an issue. But
right.
Yeah, cinephiles definitely are all about the presentation.
As far as your projects that you've been lucky enough to work on, have there been any that were just really frustrating to kind of get them to where they needed to be?
Well, it's funny because I don't know that there was any one in particular, other than to some extent there's always going to be frustration because, like with anything else, you're never going to have the time or the money that you want to do a project the way you would ideally like to do it. But then the catch-22 there is, and this is something you hear a lot about in film, television, in any number of the arts, where creative limitations due to budget actually force you to be more creative, and you wind up with something that's probably better than if you had all the time and money in the world. But yeah, it's the joke is that, it's a three-legged stool: time, money, quality. Pick two. Because one of them's going to fall by the wayside. You can't have all three. I can do it quickly, but it's going to cost more money, and the quality might not be as good because the time is truncated. Or we've got all the time in the world, but we don't have enough money. It's one of them is going to suffer.
That sounds like an old Mike Rowe quote where he talks about how there are often times where quality often can trump safety in a project sometimes. And
yeah,
he has a whole
not in the
that.
theme park world. Safety is first and foremost, even above the show. It's because, as you might imagine, the safety on these rides and attractions is paramount.
Yeah.
Or Universal or Disney.
Did you have one that was just the most gratifying for you, though? Like something we were like, oh man, I wish this was a project that could go on forever.
or even just the most
probably-
fun, like the most
probably
enjoyable.
Star Tours, and then I worked on what became Galaxy's Edge for a year, where we were playing with a lot of the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy characters and situations. And being a Lucas and Spielberg disciple, growing up in the 70s and 80s, with Jaws, and then the Star Wars trilogy, the Indy trilogy, getting to play in those sandboxes. And I've also been able to do a lot of work with Jurassic Park and Jurassic World. So between the two companies and a lot of the IP that I've worked with, I've actually been able to work with those guys. And with Star Wars in particular, you just never want that to end. I'll never forget the day that I was at Skywalker Ranch to pitch Star Tours to George Lucas with the rest of the project team, and you're sitting there, looking around, trying to be in the moment and be a professional and do what you need to do. But as there's also that little kid inside that's going, "Hey, you're at Skywalker Ranch pitching a Star Wars anything, to George Lucas," and that was a pretty good day, I have to admit.
That's got to be surreal. Just sitting there in that room with him, just here's my idea for your toy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Your playground, my script. It's
this is how I want to play with your toys.
Yeah, and that's it's funny you say that, because that's something that I have always taken very seriously, is being a steward of these characters. And for me, and I've done a little original work in my life, like the independent film, and I've got some ideas for novels and screenplays that I'm probably still going to get to eventually. But I've loved having a career where I've been able to sit in a very big, very expensive sandbox and play with all of these other toys that I grew up loving. There's nothing like that. And just to be even adjacent to that film world, and in the case of Star Tours, we're making a Star Wars movie, so when I ride the ride and I see Vader grab the star speeder in a force hold, and there's that kind of tug of war back and forth, and then R2 brings the guns online, so he's got to activate his lightsaber, and then the backwards takeoff, I'll be riding it with my kid going, that came out of my head, and it just, not in an arrogant way or a haughty way, it's just as a little kid going, this is insane. I love it. I love that I got to do that.
So we're all our own worst critics when it comes to things we create and things we do. So just out of curiosity, do you watch those things? If you were to go on Star Tours, would you go there and say, man, I could have done that, or why didn't I do that?
Yeah, and that I do think is that's an artistic thing, because that was something that started to occur to me when I would see film directors who came off a little grumpy in interviews, or actors go, I don't watch my own stuff. And I'm like, oh, you got the greatest life in the world. Why would you not watch this stuff? And then you get it, because I can walk through an attraction or a whole park or whatever and just go, we didn't have enough money for that. Yeah, that should have been better. Yeah, we could have done this.
And you can see how much people love and enjoy it, but you're still picking it apart.
Yep. Exactly. Which is why we got the special editions, because George Lucas to this day is still picking it apart. And I get that. It's like, and I don't, want to trigger a giant, special edition debate, but I am a firm believer in creators' rights, and it's like, it's his movie. If he wants to continue tinkering with it because he's not happy with the original product, then more power to you, because I my view is, because most of us fans have the original somewhere. I still have there was one of the DVD releases had the unaltered versions as a special feature.
I still have on VHS.
Yeah, exactly.
I still have on VHS.
Listen, people can debate this one to the end of time, but I remember my ex-wife, I found her one of those Little Mermaid in like the white plastic cases that opens up, those old ones. Yeah. I'm telling you, I studied that thing like a graduate student. Anyone who says it's not there is lying. There's a dick on that box.
Jesus Christ.
I hate saying it, but
and they beat SNL to the punch.
Just for any of the kids that may be listening to this podcast, a VHS tape is how they used to put movies in. You'd stick it into a machine and it would eat it.
And the greatest sale of all time is when they sold you a separate machine to rewind it.
Oh, that was the greatest.
just because it looked like a car or something like that. I was like, Jesus, how dumb are we?
That was a game changer, though, VHS, because I was 11 when we first got ours. And because I remember we got a VCR and cable during the same summer, and like my head exploded. You're like, wait, I can have this now. I can watch this whenever I want. And now it's like I'll be sitting with my own kids, and my daughter, who's 6, goes crazy if a commercial comes on. She goes, skip it. I'm like, I can't. It's on television. We're actually watching live terrestrial television right now.
It's been so long since we've had normal commercials. Nowadays, when they're on, we almost sit there and go, what's this?
Yeah,
We're actually
exactly.
paying attention now.
This seems delightfully old-fashioned. I'm going to go out and get Arby's now just to reward them.
It bothered me when commercials started showing up on things like Disney Plus and Hulu and stuff like that. That started bothering me.
Or in the movie theater, which it still bothers me, because it's like, we come here to get away from this.
Right.
At least they don't do it in the middle of the movie, though. That's always the positive.
That's true.
I grew
and now
up
with the
with
seats, you can just show up as close as possible to the showtime anyway.
I grew up with a young brother who's special needs, and Toy Story, for one reason or another, was the first thing he really latched onto and like fully caught his attention. And we're both old enough to where, for him, it came out, when we when VHS was still the only option.
Yeah.
DVDs hadn't even come out yet. So, but by the time it got to DVD, he had worn out about 3 VHS tapes, because the moment it would end, he was impatient while it rewound, and then it got back to it. So that year he got the DVD for his birthday, it was like the greatest thing of all time. Because by then they had 2 of them, and now you can just pop in between movies.
Yep.
And alternate.
And you never had to worry about rewinding.
Right.
Exactly.
How do you feel about all the live action remakes that they've been doing of their animated classics?
It's interesting, because most of them have been so successful, you can't argue it from a business standpoint. And for me, I tend to gravitate to the ones where they really departed and did something different. So, like, to this day, my favorite live action adaptation of an animated film from Disney is Cinderella, because they took it they departed enough from the source material so that you felt you were watching something new or newer. And then Cruella with Emma Stone from a couple years ago was absolutely flawless. I thought she was unbelievable. And then I just took my kids to see Lilo and Stitch yesterday, and it was adorable. So I gravitate to the ones where they use the original as a bit of a departure point. I don't care as much for the beat for beat remakes. It's like when Gus Van Sant remade Psycho. I'm like, why? What was this?
I was trying when you said beat for beat remake. I was like, damn it, who did that? And you brought it right to the front of my brain. So there you go.
Yeah, you still have to make your movie for the audience that's actually going to see it.
Yeah.
Now, Hitchcock made that movie for the audience at that time. Van Sant should have made it more palatable for the current audience.
And I seem to recall in interviews, he treated it more like an experiment, really, because I think he wanted to see, because that was at a time, and maybe this is still true now, but where, God forbid, a young person should watch a black and white film. So I think but he talked about how it was an experiment to see how well a Hitchcock film, again, shot for shot remake, would do with a modern audience. What kills me, though, is that he actually got a major studio to fund, what was essentially an experiment. And I thought it was interesting, and I love Vince Vaughn, so I was more fascinated by it than anything else. But again,
it wasn't a bad movie. It just wasn't the right movie.
Yeah, you're like.
And again, he's Gus Van Sant. They always say make something that's a hit, and then they'll let you make what you want, which is usually crap.
Yeah. Well, what was funny was like he hit big with Good Will Hunting, which was an original story that kind of came out of nowhere and took the world by storm. And then literally his next project was Psycho, I think.
I don't know if this would fall in your realm, but I know anytime I've been to Disney World, and I know it's the same way for millions of other people. When you're going around the park, one of everyone's favorite pastimes is the hidden Mickeys.
Yeah.
Have you been involved in one, or do you have a favorite one?
I have never done a hidden Mickey per se. I have contributed a lot of Easter eggs. Certainly, like when we did an enhancement at Big Thunder Mountain years ago, about 10 or 12 years ago. And that I put in all of these references to the Apple Dumpling Gang, which is one of my favorite, Disney live action comedies. And I had references to this deeper Big Thunder mythology that Tony Baxter, who's a Disney legend and the Imagineer responsible for Big Thunder, a lot of Easter eggs, a lot of references to the Society of Explorers and Adventurers, which is a sort of subset of Disney stories in the parks. So yeah, for me, it's all Easter eggs and references. Generally, the hidden Mickeys are a visual element that people are sneaking in more often than not when they're in the field, and painting something. Because again, it's sort of the worst kept secret. It's like the Imagineers do it. They know they do it. We know they do it, but we don't talk about it. Although nowadays there's official Disney guidebooks to hidden Mickey. So I think everyone has sort of latched onto the idea at this point.
What brought on your transition from Disney to Universal? Was it just you needed a new challenge or something, or
honestly, it was the opportunity to sort of graduate from show writer to creative director, and they were ready and able to give me that opportunity, and that's really why I jumped at it. And I had also worked at Universal before in the 90s on the live entertainment side, and worked on Halloween Horror Nights and a lot of the live shows and events and stuff. So, and Universal has been a part of my DNA from the very beginning too, whether it was the classic Monsters or the Abbott and Costello movies or Spielberg's films. Universal has always been a steady part of my diet as well. So it really emotionally it was tough to leave Disney. But for my career, it turned out to be the right thing because of all the opportunities I was able to get. But Universal is also home to any number of things that I dearly love. So from that standpoint, it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, I remember first taking my son to see How to Train Your Dragon because it was something he wanted to see, and I'm like, all right, it's his thing. Of course, I'm going to go. We're going to the theater, so why not? And falling in love with it with him.
Yeah.
To the point where when 2 and 3 came out, it was us rushing to the theater that Saturday morning, to go see these. And now he's grown. He's off in the world doing his own thing, and I'm still a grown ass man going, wait, there's a live action one coming out. When is this? What day am I going? What's going on?
It looks great.
Which strangely, the dragons still look like the same dragons that were created in the original.
It just looks like you're going from 720 to 1080p.
Yeah, they're higher fidelity, but they're the same dragon.
Well, that was what occurred to me, because obviously with Star Wars, I was a big Clone Wars fan, the TV series. And there were times where you would watch that and say, there's really not a whole lot of difference between this and the prequels because they're both digital environments with digital vehicles and digital characters, and it's funny because there have been times where I'll refer to one of the Disney live action films and, one of my friends will call me on and say, it's still animated, right? It just looks real, but
that's like when they did the live action Lion King. I was like, I'm so torn with the way that one's described because I'm like, it's not live action. It's still just computer generated.
Even the live action Jungle Book was just a kid jumping around on a green screen.
Right.
The entire movie was one kid moving around in a.
What I loved about Jungle Book though is two things: Bill Murray as Baloo, Christopher Walken as King Louie. I'm sold.
Oh yes,
you got my money.
You give me Christopher Walken in anything, and I'm sold.
Yeah, exactly.
You could have just stopped with "What I love is Bill Murray," and I would have been there with you.
Oh yeah.
Just
Bill Murray.
Anything Bill Murray, to the point where like I think I'm maybe like one of 5 people in the world who loves The Life Aquatic, and the other ones are Wes Anderson, Bill Murray, and maybe my son and one other person.
So
Well, you're Chicago guys, so you kind of have to love Bill Murray.
We
don't have a choice. No, we're stuck.
I refer to him with my kids as Uncle Bill because it pisses off my wife. She's like, they're going to grow up thinking he's really their uncle. And then I had an opportunity to meet him last year, and I told him that story, and he started laughing. And he goes, "Oh my God, that's awesome. Am I on your side or your wife's side?" And I said, "My wife's side. I think that's why she's angry." And then, as fate would have it, 2 months after that, I was able through a connection, I was able to take my son to the premiere of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, and he got to meet him. And he was just so sweet.
There's your Uncle Bill.
And I said, I go, "I'm the jackass you met a couple months ago who said,
Please tell me you took the opportunity to send a picture to your wife. You'd be like, look, it's him and his uncle."
No, I did. He recorded a video asking where my daughter was. He could not have been nicer. He was so sweet. And my son gave him this little Gozerian Society lapel pin, and he gave it to him, and he put it right in his lapel right then. It was really sweet. And obviously those pictures in that video are like priceless.
I don't know where it is now, but if you can ever find it, there's a documentary about Bill Murray where they treat him like Bigfoot.
Yep,
and it's fantastic.
I can't get enough of it. I love that he's out there in the world doing his thing.
Yeah, it really shows you, like, some people just do it right.
Yeah, exactly.
So from one cinephile to another, we ask ourselves questions all the time. We ask each other questions all the time. And it's almost an impossible question, I think. What is your absolute, without a doubt, favorite movie of all time? The one movie you could watch over and over and over and over and over again.
Well, if you phrase it like that, then I think it's got to be Raiders of the Lost Ark, because for the longest time I said It's a Wonderful Life. Mm-hmm. And then I realized, is it really your favorite stacked up to? But when you say watch it over and over and over and over again, Raiders and all the indie films, the fact that they're on Paramount Network and all these other channels like 24/7 now, I will leave it on. And my wife will come in like, "How many times have you seen this? And this has commercials. What are you doing?" I go, "It's on. Someone programmed it. They want me to watch it." But so at any rate, I would toggle between It's a Wonderful Life, Jaws, and Raiders. But the older I get, I think I'm settling on Raiders. Okay. But it's hard.
For myself, it's Tombstone. Like, I could watch Tombstone.
That's another one. Like Tombstone and The Fugitive. If it's
on TV, like you said, if it's on TV,
like,
it stays there.
My night. Yep.
Yeah. Nope,
and Tombstone, just the quotes. Tombstone is a fantastic movie.
By far my absolute favorite Val Kilmer movie of all time.
Yep.
I've personally got to go The Princess Bride, The Life Aquatic, and Talladega Nights. Those are 3 movies that they could be on at any point, like you said. Like it could be a Sunday and they're on TBS and you catch the last half hour and you're like, well, this is what I'm doing now.
Exactly.
That's almost a question that you have to give your top 3 because one's not fair.
Yeah. And even if I could expand it to 2, I think Jaws is the other one. Because Jaws and Raiders are just perfect movies, period.
See, my second favorite movie is Goodfellas.
Goodfellas is great too.
I love the gangster movies. It's just a special genre on its own.
We're forgetting the elephant in the room here. Where did your Kevin Smith love start at? Because for me, I think the first thing I saw before I went back and watched the rest was probably Mallrats.
That it was funny because for me it is Clerks, although I didn't see it in the theater because I don't think it was widely distributed. But that was when I was at the height of my indie film craze, for myself. So I knew about it ahead of time and read all the press coming out of Sundance. And as you probably remember, 30 years ago, the headline was, "Oh my God, this movie's filthy. It's profane." And I'm like, "Oh my God, I gotta
watch that."
And so I don't think I saw.
Yeah,
it
they
in
don't realize
theater.
the service they're doing the film at that point.
Yeah, exactly. But I think I just bought the Laserdisc sight unseen because it coincided with when I got my first Laserdisc player. But it does go back to Clerks, and then everything else I had seen in the theater. I'm a huge Mallrats fan. Brody Bruce is one of my favorite characters ever. And then I still think my favorite film of his is Chasing Amy. I think it's his best movie, and I think it's my personal favorite. But yeah, from Mallrats on, I saw everything in the theater, but it does go all the way back to Clerks for me.
I have a love for all of them in different ways individually, but I've always said that besides Strikes Back, that Clerks 2 is possibly my favorite because I think it has some of his best writing
Yeah.
in it, and it's one of those, it's the Kevin Smith movie, and I could watch them all over and over again, but that's the one that's like we were talking about earlier, like the Sunday morning, Saturday morning, catch it anytime. All right, I'm watching the rest of this one.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's a lot of bravery in his writing in that one as well. I'll leave that at that point.
No, and it's funny because we're exactly the same age, and not that makes a huge difference, but for me, that's always been like a connection point. Like, oh, we're both the same age, clearly have all the same interests, and from Clerks on, it's almost like some of us took pride in his achievement. Like, oh, one of us has made it, and in many ways, I feel like he's the voice of our generation.
Yes.
But specifically for like the nerd subculture, the comic book movie.
And I don't think he accepts or realizes it in many ways.
Yeah, and it's funny because he's obviously always been very self-deprecating. He'll be the first person to take a shot at himself first. But I do hope on some level, he knows what he's contributed and how much he's touched people. Not in a gross way.
No, he's a hugger. He is definitely a hugger.
He is 100%.
We've never met the man without getting a hug from him. It's just, it doesn't happen.
What's it been now? 3 times?
At least 3.
Yeah.
We did a cruise with him. Matter of fact, I thought about this when you mentioned Jason Lee. We did a cruise with him about a year and a half ago.
Oh, the first one.
Yeah, the first cruise askew. Poor Jason Lee. We didn't know it until after the fact. We were just always like, why is he wearing the same thing every day? They lost the guy's luggage.
Oh my gosh.
Felt so bad for him when we found that out.
He was wearing the
cool
same
as a cucumber.
He was wearing the same corduroys and cable knit sweater the entire cruise.
Because that's what you want in the
cruise. I was like, somebody couldn't hook the guy up with something different, like
little resort wear or something.
Right? Yeah, something. Oh,
give him the Norwegian Cruise Line shorts and T-shirt or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. It's like he's on a sitcom. He always shows up in the same wardrobe, like Fonzie.
We got up there to actually have a chance to meet Jay and Kevin, and I had written a book that was heavily inspired by him and a lot of his writing and stuff like that. And one of the stagehands at the shows that they were doing there had given it to him. So when we met him, they had told us ahead of time. They're like, Kevin's a talker. He will get engaged with you. Please try not to engage him too much. We got about 1,000 people to get through. Yeah. We're trying to move it along.
Yeah, don't feed the animals.
I barely said a word to him. All I really asked was like, did you get it? And he then describes the cover to me and starts talking and going into it like he hadn't read anything or anything yet, but just holding me by the shoulders to where we're like this close to the point where Kip thought that we were going to kiss or something. And then him and
he didn't see that part. He was too engrossed in this right here.
Yeah.
He did not see this. I'm like, guys. And of course, Jason Mewes, who wants to get to his family and go back and eat, and he's been standing there for 3 hours already, has another 2 hours to go. It's just sitting there because, can you guys hurry the fuck up? I want to eat.
And then we do our picture and everything, and I walk off and I forget to even say anything to Mewes. So like an ass, I turned back. I was like, "Oh yeah, big fan." He's like, "Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
appreciate it."
He has since made up with Jason Mewes
Yes, quite a
Good.
bit. Quite a bit on that
we
one.
game with him on occasion. So it's,
What are you currently working on right now besides the secret stash project? Like I want to save that for last before we get to our Pivo questionnaire.
Well, funny mentioning Bill Murray. I'm actually in the midst also of trying to get a Murray Brothers Caddyshack back in Orlando. So I literally have a proposal out to Bill's lawyer, and so I was able to get to the lawyer. Jason Reitman was kind enough to refer me, and I'd already talked to Warner Brothers because what I would like to do is take their Murray Brothers Caddyshack concept, which is in St. Augustine and Chicago. I think it's at O'Hare. Right at
it's Rosemont.
Yeah, Rosemont. I've been there. It's fantastic, actually.
Yeah, but I want to do it with the official Warner Brothers font and name and the gopher and really do it up big. So it's similar to the Secret Stash project in that I'm trying to take something that exists and make it into kind of an Orlando destination. And then I've got some freelance work going on, doing a little work for Disney, and got a couple book projects in the works, my memoir and another book on Pirates of the Caribbean. So a lot going on.
So where do you stand on the Secret Stash project? Because I know you said this would be the third one, and you want to kind of make it like a focal point, like a clubhouse, like a gathering point for the View Askew universe as a whole, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that has to do with the notion of making it more of a destination. And what I mean by that is if you go to the one in New Jersey or even the one that was in LA for a while, it's a comic book store and it's got elements of a mini museum and things like that. But down here, we want it to be all of that plus, 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 plus. And the reason I landed on the word clubhouse is it goes back to that notion of the third place, home, work, third place. What's your cheers? Where do you go where everybody knows your name, that you feel comfortable, that third place? And that's really what we would want the Orlando Secret Stash to be. So what we're doing right now is trying to figure out financing. I'm contemplating a Kickstarter or something like that. I don't know much about that, but now that I'm freelancing and on my own, I have the time and the opportunity to try to pursue some of these dream projects. And the funny thing is I was texting back and forth with Kevin, and it was right after tickets went on sale for Dogma. And he texted me and he goes, I think you may be onto something here, because our Orlando screening sold out almost immediately and we had to add a second show. Because at first I think he was a little skeptical, like, it obviously the two businesses he's in, comic books and the Smodcastle cinemas, it's like they're not the go-to businesses in this day and age. I want to open a movie theater, I want to open a comic book store, but I think that if it's all of the above plus food and beverage and a bar component, we call it a Jay and Silent Bob's Geek Easy. I think there's definitely a huge market.
I like that.
I do. I like that one.
I honestly think we all believe in Kevin, honestly, often more than he believes in himself.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. And, it's you got to respect the humility, but I do hope that he knows on some level, exactly what he's accomplished and what he's done for people.
Yeah, I think it, to an extent, he does. I think he's very humble, but also I think he keeps himself humble for a good reason. Like he knows deep down what he's done and what he means to pop culture as a whole. But also, he wants to be that approachable, normal person that everybody still loves to this day.
Yeah. And I think he's done that because, what you see is what you get. And even in my dealings with him on the phone or texting or whatever, he's just a regular dude.
Well, Mr. Surrell, we don't want to keep you too much longer. But before we get to our Pivo questionnaire, would you mind telling everybody where they can find you?
I don't really have much of an online presence. I'm not on Twitter or anything. I really just am on Facebook and LinkedIn. But
I wanted you to give out your address so they could stalk you.
My home address
or at
Social
least keep
Security
the
number,
toilet paper
License
filled
plate
up at all
numbers,
times.
you know, the whole,
and the results of my latest blood work will all be furnished. But no, like if you want to know more about my career, this sounds horrible to say, but you can just Google me, and there's a great YouTube video of a panel discussion I did that kind of sums up my whole career, and there's links to the books and all of that. So that's probably easiest if you can't get enough of this. And who can?
And you let's not forget you also wrote a pretty tremendous screenwriting manual itself. So I think you should plug that.
Yeah,
That one.
Screenplay by Disney. It's funny because that wasn't the most successful book I've ever done, and yet I get more positive feedback from that, I think, than anything else, from people who were legitimately helped. Because the feedback that I've received is that I made the principles of storytelling and screenwriting accessible by using all of those Disney animated films as examples, because everybody knows them, everybody's internalized them, and that makes it very accessible when you're trying to learn about storytelling and screenwriting.
That is 100%. Kip?
So, yep. So what we like to do, they say if something's already been perfected, just steal it, right? So what we like to do is we like to do this questionnaire that was created by Bernard Pivot, perfected by James Lipton inside the Actor Studio.
He stole it. Yep.
No, he stole it and made it even better. So we're just going to steal it and make it worse. So rapid fire, you know how it goes. What is your favorite word?
Yes.
What is your least favorite word?
No.
What sound or noise do you love?
My kids laughing.
What sound or noise do you hate?
People popping their gum.
What profession other than your own would you like to pursue?
I want to be Rick Blaine. I want to have my own bar and restaurant and sit there in a tux and like make out checks to people and all that. And that's why I'm fascinated with the third place. I want my Rick's Cafe.
Okay. What profession other than your own would you not like to attempt?
Politics.
Creatively, what turns you on?
The collaborative process. When you're in a room with people and things are really firing, or a great pitch meeting. I've literally come out of certain meetings and just been like, oh, that was mind blowing. That was better than sex, within reason. But yeah, just the creative process, usually in a group setting, or when you're pitching somebody and it's going really well.
In the same vein, creatively, what turns you off?
People that are close-minded and want to shoot down an idea before it's really had an opportunity to live.
What is your favorite curse word?
Again, it's not an original answer, but fuck is just so versatile. Although I will say, when I was watching Inside the Actor Studio, one of my favorite responses was when Gwyneth Paltrow goes, balls. And I'm like, that is a good one.
All right. And
there's something to be said for a cocksucker, because it's just nasty.
To this day,
really angry.
To this day, we still get cunt, but with an English accent. Everyone wants to put that on there.
You can't just say it. You can't say it raw and American. You have to say it with that
cunt.
British.
Exactly. You get a pass if they think you're British. Like, oh, that's just their culture. That's fine.
All right. And the last question, and one of my favorites. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Well, that wasn't so bad, now was it?